topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Hello and welcome to It's Your Voice, the show that hosts enriching conversations in diversity. My name is Bahia Yaksan. I'm delighted to be your host. I'm a diversity educator and a core alignment coach, which means I train and coach people in identifying patterns of behavior that they want to change, and they approach me to help them basically train their own brains, identify what habits are catching them up, not serving them well, not serving other people as well, and better yet, cultivating new patterns that can become their main pathway. If you're interested in seeing samples of what I coach, like classes I offer, you can go to my website, which is called knowwhatyouwantcoaching.wordpress.com. I have a lovely guest today. I'm so excited. I recently met her, Fairuze Ahmed Ramirez, and the show is called In Fairuze's Voice, Writing Toward Liberation and Collective Care. Welcome, Fairuze. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Bahia. Thank you for this opportunity to talk a little bit about what I do in my classrooms. I appreciate it.
Well, I'd like to read your bio and maybe stop and before I finish the whole thing to just get your input on like some of your background, because it's rich, it's fascinating, and I've got to experience one of your workshops, which truly is helps you speak from your heart. So I've really enjoyed it. But I'll just start by going back to the bit I have about your background. And that you're going to reflect some of what we're going to talk about today is you'll be reflecting on this type of workshop that you teach. And I met you at a multicultural conference, the 32nd Multicultural Conference at Sacramento State.
Mm-hmm.
And you share how your identity and lived experiences inform your commitment to reimagining writing classrooms as liberatory spaces rooted in student voice, inquiry, and collective care. And even though it might be obvious, I just wondered if, is what you mean, and I know it's out there, you didn't make up this word, but how would you describe a liberatory space?
Yeah, so I'm drawing on the works of bell hooks. But for those who may not know who bell hooks is, so liberatory teaching in my first year writing class, or really it can be in any class, it's where I'm not just teaching students like how to follow writing rules. I'm helping them see themselves as thinkers and knowledge makers, right? So instead of centering and focusing on grades or like being grammatically correct in their writing, they're able to document and witness their thoughts through reflective writing, where they house in a portfolio. So they build a portfolio all semester long. And students are able to track on their growth over time, right? Rather than being judged on a single paper. So this shifts like the focus from like, am I good enough, to what am I learning about myself? Like, how does my identity inform what I think about important topics in society, right? So like thinking about, asking this question about what can I use writing for to transform the world around me. And then thinking about really a liberatory classroom to me is thinking about who am I including and excluding. So historically in English classes, we haven't really centered marginalized voices, historically marginalized voices. So really thinking about, including the voices of, for example, Black, Indigenous people of color, LGBTQ, like centering their voices, their stories, and then also students themselves, their stories. So, I want to give them a voice, teach them how to use their voice, assert their voice, while also incorporating other voices who they feel are aligned with their values. So yeah, in a nutshell, that kind of sounds abstract, but I have key assignments throughout the semester where that's essentially what students are doing, using writing as a thinking tool, using it as a tool for asking important problematic questions. Yeah, so is that a good start?
Oh, it's a great start. And it's, yeah, I want to read more because, no, that's a great start. And I already feel like the transformative quality of that. Like, imagine if everybody had a class where the teacher wasn't judging whether or not you matched standard mainstream Eurocentric rules, but it was about like your experience, your voice, like your family, your background, your history. Like, imagine how different the world would be.
Yeah, and I think what all of us still to this day, it doesn't matter whether you're a teenager or an adult, like learning how to express yourself clearly is difficult. So giving them or creating a classroom, whether it's online or in person, creating a space to where they can learn how to express themselves more fully and clearly, like it's a skill that takes practice, right? And so I want to do it in a way that builds confidence around, you know, their lived experiences and the topics that mean something to them or that's important to them. And so it's important to think about, I think, always getting student feedback and, staying fresh that way. Like I always say, my students keep me fresh, young, just like my kids keep me young. Right. But yeah.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Staying fresh. So again, I want to read a little bit more and then you add whatever you want.
Sure.
Because I love this. Like, at the heart of this work is the Solidarity Project, where students draw on personal, family, and community stories to challenge dominant narratives and create space for voices that are often ignored, excluded, or misrepresented. The project centers lived experience and community knowledge as meaningful sources of understanding, grounded in commitments to ethical storytelling, cultural respect, integrity, and accountability to historically marginalized communities.
Yeah. So let's back up and unpack that. So if you can recall during our the introduction of my workshop presentation, and I'm going to make sure I say that, presenting alongside me was Robert Brown, and Lisa Orr was supposed to be there. These are Robert Brown and Lisa Orr, returning community college students, and I wanted to center their solidarity project to show in practice what it means to build a counter community of care, and to create knowledge that is accountable to students' communities. So because I believe if education is supposed to be a practice of freedom, right, then it needs to be translated and accountable to meet the needs of students' communities. So rather than telling students to write for an academic journal article or to submit to an academic journal article, let's engage in a community-based project where we can identify the needs of our community, represent the voices of our community with care, with integrity, and then say, here's a problem, and bring it to the table, to the stakeholders, to those who have more power, who maybe can take this issue seriously, especially when it comes to like thinking about, policies that don't serve, and still to this day don't serve the needs of our historically marginalized communities. So what I said in the beginning where I said, writing to liberate pedagogy needs to be accountable to our students, right? Locally into their communities. And so they should be the ones taking charge, and we should be their supporters, right? So I would argue and say, I'm enacting solidarity in my class as an educator when I am trying to use the little bit of power that I have, right? Because professors have authority and power, although I would say I'm very low on the totem pole. I don't have any institutional authority. I'm just a adjunct. But I enact solidarity by really thinking about how to create a space for my students and give them the necessary tools to liberate themselves in their community, right? Not in a let me save you way, right? But giving them the platform and the agency to, take charge of their learning and talk about the things that really matter to them.
That is such a shift.
Huh?
That is such a shift from traditional education.
Thank you. I'll take that as a compliment.
Oh, totally. Oh, totally a compliment. Like the whole part of like making it really relevant. Like who wouldn't enjoy writing or reading about something that's relevant to you, right? Rather than, I mean, other people's histories are fascinating, but if it's this kind of the same storyline that we've heard year after year, just increasing compilation, after a while, you just really want.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie, like, or not be transparent about, this is something that all educators are thinking about. How do you keep students engaged in their learning? Well, you really have to think about the student. You have to be student-centered and, ask them. I always try to incorporate students' perspectives, feedback about my teaching, and I have check-ins with them, like free write, like mental health check-ins, what's going well, what's not going well. So this is a way that it also helps me stay fresh, I like to say, and like, in tune with students' needs. And it's a really, really tough time right now. Just, in education, and this semester enrollment was low. And so how can this meaningful work that students do in my class, go towards their final grade? Because I often find this kind of conflation, right? Where institutional student learning outcomes say, this is what students need to do before they pass on to the next class, right? They need to have 5,000 words written. But, I feel like that has to do with like the legacy of like quantification and always valuing numbers over actual meaning making and sense making. And so this is something that I have to grapple with as an educator. I know what I'm doing is important and meaningful, but then again, I also navigate this tension in, higher ed as an institution where, you have to report grades, and, you have to like think, okay, so every piece of writing, it can be scattered in different assignments, should be, it's going over 5,000, right? So this is something that I always have to think about. But I guess for me, like what I do things in small chunks, I scaffold and support students' writing practices and in small chunks. And I always negotiate with them because I do contract grading, portfolio assessment. So they have a contract grading like rubric, and I negotiate it with them throughout the semester. And basically this rubric, grading rubric contract, it corresponds to the portfolio, where I'm going to look at the portfolio at the very end and see how they kind of evolved, bear witness to their thinking and their process and what they learned about themselves. And that's the final. And so long as they do that, they get an A. And so for me, it's a way to not compare students individually, like, or how can I say, pin them against each other, but look at their work individually, right, to see their individualized learning processes, right? And, it's easy to say, or it's how can I say, being transparently, like, you're looking at the quality, right, of their thinking, of the deeper meaning making. So the more deeper I can sense that they're meaning making and, questioning, like, to me, that's great. That's what I want to see, right? I think that's what every educator wants to see. But really, where I grapple with too, it's not just for me, it's for them, right? It's an empowering way for them to assess and keep track of their learning too. So essentially, it's not just for me, but institutionally wise, I have to report, right, grades.
Yeah, I can see you didn't say dilemma, but I can see you have to work within
constraints. It is a dilemma.
constraints.
That's a good word. That's a good word to describe it. It's a dilemma, for sure.
And it sounds like what a gift for students to be able to be building a portfolio, cultivating their own critical thinking, and having a chance to write and develop it.
Yeah. Did I answer your question about the Solidarity Project? Like, what's the main purpose of it?
Oh, just say more.
So for the Solidarity Project, really, it's giving students an opportunity to either represent their community, maybe origin story, because my purpose is to give them an opportunity to draw on different kinds of knowledge systems, because historically, the knowledge that's been valued has been very, very Eurocentric, scientific model producing, right? So we have many students who have Indigenous backgrounds and or just, familial stories to tell that, teach wisdom. So can we center wisdom sometimes? You know what I'm saying? Like, moral lessons. So really, it's a way for them to enact solidarity through ethical storytelling. And, as I'm learning liberatory decolonial research methods, I'm trying to teach my students. So, for example, like including the voices of the people who you're trying to help elevate and tell their story, including them a part of the process of like translating, right? And checking and making sure that you're doing it, honoring how they want to be represented, right? So if you're going to be telling, say, for example, a story of somebody from a different community than you, like, how are you including them in that process, and doing it with care? Because historically in academia, it hasn't been that way. It's been very extractive, where I'm going to study this person because, they're underrepresented, or I'm going to try to represent their voice because they're underrepresented, but I'm not going to include them in the process of, how essentially I'm going to be telling their story. And basically, academics build their career this way. And I'm an academic, so it's like I'm straddling this point in my academic journey where I'm like, I do not want to do this. I will not do this. So, I think one way to not do this is you really have to talk a lot about your positionality. I need to talk about me. Like, how does my personal journey in academia inform the topic that I'm going to be talking about. You know, for example, like in my dissertation topic in my EDD program, or for students when they're asking themselves, how does my positionality as, let's say, a heterosexual white male, how does this inform what biases might I have that I'm not aware of, that I need to like really kind of check in and kind of grapple with before I go write this story about this person in this LGBTQ community? Do you get what I'm saying? Like, this is what I mean by doing this with care and with integrity. Feminist reflexive approaches. Oh yeah, thank you. Whoever's listening.
Trash.
But yeah, so hopefully that answers your question. And
well, oh yeah, I mean, no, it's everything you're saying is adding more.
During our talk, I talked a lot. During the workshop talk, I talked a lot about just the steps that we took, right, to kind of get students to think about, why is this important, or like, why is it important to check our cognitive and confirmation bias? Because we all have cognitive and confirmation bias. Like, we are biologically wired to think in binary terms. If you study the brain, I can't say the words because they're very hard to pronunciate. I do this every semester. This part of the brain is very, very emotional. This part of the brain thinks logically. It's not to say that we shouldn't value the emotional side of our brain. We should, but we need to recognize the limitations and how it may interfere with really having a clearer picture and idea of where we might be holding on to a strongly held belief that might make me come off as like racist or, you know, homophobe. You know what I'm saying? Like, I try to do this with care so that, because some students it's easier for them to understand this, whereas some it's harder, you know? So yeah.
Well, we're all conditioned. I mean, there are layers and layers and layers and layers of incidents and media, and then the curriculum, the standard training that teaches us biases too. We learn them, and that's part of. Did you say we're schooled? Yeah.
I said we learn how to be,
right.
Like so in my personal blog, I write a lot about this. Actually, I presented at a conference last year online, the Cal OER conference, and I talked about how we, you know, are all socially and academically conditioned to not see the value of oral storytelling. And there's academic social conditioning of, you know, looking at certain kinds of teaching practices as more legitimate and academic versus others. Like, definitely. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, so I talk about this in my blog, and, you know, I think that it's important to recognize and to kind of, all of us academics should grapple with that.
Definitely. I think that would be, it helps anyone. The more clear I am about myself and my biases, the better our conversation can be. Cultural studies scholar. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you for your positive feedback. I didn't know that I would be reading people's comments. Do you include your subjects in the writing process itself? So, well, first, I just want to kindly point out that I would not consider and I haven't conducted my actual study yet, but I would not call my, I guess you could say, participants as subjects. I would call them co-conspirators because I'm including them in the process of knowledge creation. And I would probably want to frame it in a way where I'm saying, this is a collective study, right? So it's not just about, if I was, right, you know, say, for example, doing a case study, and it's not just going to be about me, I would say co-conspirator I would not say subject. Thank you for your question.
That's a nice reframing too. Well, can you share more about like your own, like you care deeply and you put a tremendous amount of effort into helping individuals understand and appreciate and value their own background and heritage and everything that's helped make them them. Can you share more about your own, whatever you want to share, your own positionality and also that like that's sort of like your position in the context of society, right? Positionality.
Yeah. So I'm first generation Yemeni Arab American. I was the first in my family to marry outside my race, culture, religion. So I definitely know what it's like to navigate the in between of you belong and you don't belong, or both sides, like from my culture and family, and then in academia, because I got my BA in anthropology. I have my master's in teaching English to speakers of other languages, plus a college composition certificate. So, and yeah, so this is all definitely informed why I put so much care into designing classrooms where everyone feels included. And I think it really starts with building community from the very, very beginning. And, I guess you could say personal wise, and, when I was a kid in school, I never saw anything on Yemen, never read anything about Yemen. And, Arabs are talked about and generalized, they're kind of grouped together. And so this will also be another focus of my dissertation. I'm going to be talking about Arab American, or just Arabs in general, invisibility and Arab American invisibility. For most of my life, I had to identify as white. It wasn't just until recently, the works of Dr. Nadine Nabed, she's contributed a lot to the policies to challenge and to include MENA as so for those who don't know, MENA stands for Middle Eastern North African descent, to be able to identify where you're from. And then there's also debates too about that term, whether to do MENA or SWANA, Southwest. Yeah, so that whole, and then, or can we just say Arab American, right? Because, what it means to be Arab American, there's so many nuances there, I'm Arab, the Middle East is made up of 22 countries, and not all Arabs are Muslim. You have Christian Arabs, you have Arab Jews,
Druze,
so
also
there,
Druze.
Also too, Buddhists, but unfortunately, the media and educational curriculum has not done a good job in telling these stories and representing what it means to be Arab with care or with integrity. It's been so growing up, I was always villainized. I was always compared to Osama bin Laden, right? During post 9/11, it was a really tough time. So, these stories about what it means to be Arab definitely has, influenced how I teach and how I want my students to think about what it means to be you, and not overgeneralize and categorize and group, people together from different communities, group them together. Yeah, I'm also a mother of two. So motherhood, I can't help it. I channel that feminine side of me, the emotional feminine. There's so much shame. We've been historically and still even today have been wired to feel shame for being emotional or being feminine and channeling the feminine. And I just want to be clear for anyone listening, you don't have to be female to channel the feminine, you know. My partner, husband, has, you know, is a great example of that. Like, really knows how to embody both the masculine and the feminine and be nurturing and loving. And, you know, we need to talk about that more and be okay with that more, and not ascribing femininity to just exclusive sex by sex, right? Like you're either female, male, and that determines whether you have the ability to embody femininity. Yeah, so I think about this motherhood too. Yeah, like there's also like a way of knowing, honoring this way of knowing. Dr. Nadine Nabad also writes about this and has really pushed for it to be affirmed as, like, you know, radical mothering, you know, that communities who do this, you know, mother each other through all, you know, injustice. You know, this is one way of, you know, building a counter community of care, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Because when the system is not there for you, you have to be there for yourself, be there for your neighbor, you know, try to, you know, build community. And speaking of that, you know, because my experience in academia has been not the greatest, I've had people who I could rely on or somewhat, I guess you could say, vent to, who've been there to be able to like listen, right? But, you know, it hasn't been rosy. So my way of Rosie. It hasn't been Rosie.
Okay.
Rosie's my nickname, by the way. I have colleagues who call me Rosie and some who call me Fairuze, but it hasn't been Rosie. So my way of affirming my lived experience has been through writing. And, you know, like I said, I have my blog. And also what has helped me, because, you know, I had a point in my journey where it was just very, very lonely. And so after having a bad experience with a faculty evaluation, I joined professional development communities where, you know, the focus was on enacting anti-racism teaching practices. In addition, I've also joined the Los Rios Faculty for Justice in Palestine. Like these, like counter communities of care, I'm calling them counter communities of care, that exist, really do help and ease a little bit of, you know, counteract the experiences of navigating higher ed as a underrepresented scholar. Because another thing I'm noticing as well as I'm engaging in the literature is there's nothing on Arab American women. And their teaching practices. There's a lot. Black women have actually helped pave the way. Black poets, scholars have helped pave the way, where they really unapologetically share how identity informs their teaching practice. And so I'm building off of their works to kind of help situate my own. And so, yeah, I feel like I kind of went off a little bit.
No, that's beautiful.
I'm being honest, like that's all my social positionality. Like, you know, I'm such a nerd. I've always loved school since I was a little girl. I've always loved school.
Well, it helps fill out the picture and of like why you care so much from your perspective, how it has evolved, and being a part of a community that has been invisible, how writing and finding any writing that validates your experience. Thanks for the comments. Important gap to fill. I agree to the listener.
Thank you.
Just validating our existence, because if it's not in the literature that's put in front of us through education, or if, you know, if someone hands you a book that a story that you can connect to, it just can just change how you feel about yourself, how you see yourself, how you validate yourself, your family,
Mm-hmm.
and those around you. So thank you for that. I love the way you filled out the different parts of your positionality.
Thank you.
Really.
No, and I will. It's so crazy because it's going full circle now. Because and here's the thing, like, institutional systems of learning or educational systems of learning, like, they're not going to be perfect. They're not perfect, but it's important for practitioners like us and academics like us, like me, to really point out where they're getting it wrong, I think.
It's very
important. And I feel like this is kind of like a liberatory. I've even told my husband this. Like, this is like a way for it to set myself free. It's like, it's liberating. It's liberating. Even the act of writing about my experiences in my blog is liberating. And so there you go. There's your concrete example from my own positionality. And I just can't wait to continue, filling in the gaps.
Well, we're not done yet, but just for
okay, go ahead.
I just want to say right now, if you want to let people know how they can find your blog, and then we'll how do people find your blog?
It's unlisted, but so y'all, use my resources that are available to me. If any of you have ever heard of Google Sites, I've been building and refining my Google Sites. It's free. What I can do, Bahia, is I can always share it with you, and then you can share it. Possibly we can attach it in the link in here. Is there a way for me to share it here?
You could put it in the chat, and then our
where is the chat, by the way?
In the bottom right corner, and then if our sound engineer Rebel can squeeze it in.
Oh, so I just have to put join chat.
She can type it, and it can possibly be streaming in the banner if she can, if Rebel has time to do that.
Is it private chat or group chat?
It's
there it is.
Chat. Yeah.
Okay, I see it now. Okay, let me grab my
chat with everyone in the studio.
Okay, I'm going to copy.
Rebel's really good at making banners very quickly. Thank you,
All right,
Rebel.
There you go. There I am. Do you see it?
Well, she'll produce something in a minute.
Oh, okay. But yeah, there's my
it's sites google.com view teaching portfolio. Okay.
Yeah, so it started off as like a teaching portfolio. I started it back in 2020 because I wanted to kind of move beyond this abstract talk.
See it streaming now. The banner.
Thank you, Rebel. Okay, I see it.
Anyone watching?
Okay, Fairuze, yeah. I'm glad I'm able to honor both names. So my FAR, Fairuze Ahmed Ramirez Rosie, the nickname my dad gave me.
Sweet.
But yeah, no, I started this blog back in 2020 when I wanted to start keeping track and showing, what it really means to enact like an anti-oppressive, socially just teaching practice. Because, I don't know if do you know Paulo Freire? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, there's a lot of talk and mentioning of him, but I think there's this gap between like really explicitly enacting, his teaching practice, and then same goes for bell hooks, education as the practice of freedom, right? So thinking about how you can enact it as an embodied practice, that's something that I try to keep track and show concrete ways to do that in their classroom. And one thing I point out is it's one way, right? It's my way. educators should have the freedom to choose how they adapt, right? These teaching practices. But I think what's really important is to explicitly tackle and name, like, what does it mean to enact like anti-racist, or how do you do that, right? Or how do you explicitly design an assignment that's socially just? I guess that's what I meant. So
Yeah.
I think
Not
that's
easy.
more the framing. I feel like the framing of that is more inviting, because I feel like people freak out when you say anti-racist, or like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Believe me, I do. I've been working in diversity education for decades. Let me ask you, can you say a little bit more about accountability? I mean, you're talking about accountability. Like, how do you include that
For my students, or for like,
for your students in
how
their
do I
writing?
hold students accountable?
And the accountability piece that you help them cultivate.
So remember in the beginning, I was trying to say something like, okay, I'll give you an example. Let's just start with the broad one. So how higher ed education institutions always have this rhetoric of diversity, equity, inclusion, right? They love to posture these mission statements. But when you look at the curriculum and you look at what's coming out of these institutions, it's not accountable to the students' communities that they're supposed to be serving, or to the students, right? So that's what I meant. So then for me, in my class, let's now narrow it down. The example that I gave was designing assignments where I'm engaging students to think about whose voices are missing, right? Who do we need to include? How can we, how do you say, redesign? Like, so say, for example, if I had readings on Gloria Anzaldúa, Bell Hooks, James Baldwin, there's Black, Indigenous people of color, LGBTQ, but let's say we had a discussion and I was like, but who's missing? Who's missing from these readings that we haven't centered? So for example, last semester, I did a video, YouTube, a Zoom recording of me walking through students how I felt like neurodivergent authors' voices are missing. Like, for example, I did some research and I found Mel Baggs, is a non-binary autistic writer, activist, who basically asserted herself through blogging, used blogging as a way to self-preserve and tell her story. And so, like, yeah, it needs to be ongoing. Like, you can't just say, okay, here's the reading list. Like, it should be ongoing. And as the instructor, I need to be a part of that process and starting that conversation, facilitating that conversation with students. If it's not, hey, who's on the reading list? That's what I mean by being accountable.
Yeah.
Then it's, okay, the projects that you're going to work on, this solidarity project, it's giving you an opportunity to enact solidarity. Because as I said in our workshop presentation, where I asked students to define, what does solidarity and integrity mean to you, right? And then they had to share their definition and comment on 2 classmates who enriched their definition of what solidarity means in action, right? And what does it mean to write and report with integrity? So this is a way that I hold students accountable, to be mindful, mindful. Mel Baggs, yes.
Beautiful. Do you want to read that comment out? Bags describe themselves as cognitively disabled, physically disabled, chronically ill, developmentally disabled, and psychiatrically disabled.
But what I loved about her blog, some of the writings, and she's passed, may her soul rest in peace. But when I was looking at her, I was like, wow, this sounds a lot like what I'm trying to say, but in a different lens, through a different lens, saying that, systems were not designed to think about neurodivergent, disabled students. right? Autistic
Definitely not.
students.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I have a student in my class who expresses himself better, responds to prompts better by holding his phone and speaking to it and recording. And that's one way to think about an inclusive, accessible way to assess learning. It shouldn't just be in one mode where you have to sit and write this down or type this in a 5,000 page essay or a 1,000 page essay, right? Like we should honor the different ways that we can compose and show what we know, whether it's through a podcast, which I have students design can share the Solidarity Project findings in a podcast, or they can do it the traditional way in a narrative reflection, written, right, or typed. I always pronounce this wrong. Zines? I think I say zines. It's zines. You know what a zine is?
Nope.
Kind of like a collage, like a book collage. So thinking about
Beautiful.
what modes we're using or allowing students to express themselves.
I feel like we're just starting to understand. Oh, there are multitudes of ways to help people express themselves, or avenues to open.
Art
to help for us to learn how people express themselves. Yeah.
Art.
We just have about 4 minutes left, so I wanted to make sure you get a chance to say your kind of any other message or any kind of closing thought before we need to wrap up tonight.
Yeah, I think that we should allow art as a mode of expression to, demonstrate. And what is art, right? Art can be defined also in many ways. Art, like poetry, painting, but we should just allow for the meshing different modes of communication and composing to express how we're making meaning with a certain subject. It shouldn't just be relied on academic forms, the traditional academic forms. And I think all of us should think about how our identities inform our teaching practices and our beliefs about what does it mean to be competent in this subject. Yeah.
Definitely.
I don't know if there's anything else.
Well, I'm gonna.
3 minutes left here.
I wish we could play this at every every institution of education. Thank you so much for just kind of opening avenues and worlds, and just your compassion and care and mindfulness about students and how to learn and how to educate. I mean, clearly you're learning a lot from your students, by asking them to tell you who they are.
I see them as knowledge creators. I don't think that you have to be published in an academic journal to be an expert. Students are experts in their own lives. I'm an expert in my own life, and that should be considered legitimate. And I think that's maybe a good way to end. Value the lived experience. And I guess that's pretty much it for now.
Lived experience.
And if listeners want to follow along my journey, feel free to check out my my personal blog. And I just wanted to say, Bahia, it was really nice to see you walk into my workshop presentation. Your smile eased my anxiety that day, because most of my talks have been on Zoom. It's been a while since I did face-to-face presentations. So thanks for coming and showing an interest and allowing me to use your platform to share these topics that are important to me.
Oh, they're so important, and I really value your work. Thank you so much. Thanks for your workshop. Thank you for being here today. It's just beautiful what you're offering to the world. I really appreciate it. I also want to thank our engineer Rebel and our producer Dean Piper and the listeners and viewers, and everyone tune in next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Talk4TV or W4CY.com. And may we all continue to have enriching conversations in diversity. Thank you so much.
Thank you.